What's happening, people? Bed and breakfast, the one-on-one.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ben Heisler and Reed Wallace. We are here on a Thursday, going here for the next 25, 30 minutes or so, getting ready for your best bets of the night. Here on Thursday, we also have plenty to dive into with regards to the start of the second half of the NBA. Reed and I have some futures that we like and a couple of bold predictions that we'll get into just a little bit. I also want to talk to Reed about a great article that he wrote over at BetSided the other day that I think for anybody that's looking to get an early start when it comes to finding out who's going to be at the top of your bracket and the winner of the NCAA tournament, there is a great predictive stat that Reed was able to track down. What is it? 19 of the last 21 NCAA tournaments have factored into this trend, Reed?
Yeah. And do we want to tease it or we want to start there?
Oh, I think we should tease it because I know that we'll get there in just a little bit because the stat is remarkable and Reed did a great job over at BetSided on helping us find out how to get to those teams and how to find them and also how to keep an eye on them so that when we do start to fill out our brackets, we're fully prepared as well as making some of our future bets. So plenty going on the show for today. Can we start with last night because Reed's been giving me a hard time because I'm the washed parent at 33 years old with two young boys. I try to go to sleep early because I know that I'm waking up early, and I haven't had the opportunity to really experience the magic of Mountain West basketball. So I said when we were doing our live stream on Tuesday, I'm going to stay up for a game. I'm going to make sure that I check it out, watch it because I've been betting on it, not necessarily watching it. And I was waiting for Colorado State, Wyoming, the marquee matchup. And then Xavier and Providence was the longest double overtime game that I've ever seen. No, I'm sorry. It was triple overtime game.
Yeah, triple
Providence
overtime.
And they ended up eking out a win, covering the spread. A shout out to Joe Summers, who wrote that game up yesterday. I had Xavier as my underdog of the day. So close. And sure enough, that one just fell apart. But you were trying to make the argument before we got started that like those are the types of games that you just don't see from the NBA, and that brings up the level from an entertainment value when it comes to college sports.
Yeah, I get a hard time from one of my roommates, Jack, who is definitely not listening right now, but will maybe listen later. He always gives me a hard time because he's a big pro sports guy, big NFL, big NBA guy. And I, of course, kind of dip my toes into everything, but I find college sports, especially the last few years, I find it particularly entertaining because just the weirdest stuff happens that like you can't explain, that professionals just don't do. Like Providence, for example, not fouling up three and letting Xavier's Paul Scruggs go the length of the floor in 5 seconds, pull up for three, like with little resistance, pretty much. Like I know that's like somewhat of a normal play, but that doesn't happen in the NBA. They'll foul up three. They'll defend him better. So he has to, it'll have to be like a crazy heave. So I see it in college football all the time with like random plays that just happen in the games that like the mental edge of professional football or professional basketball versus college football and basketball is just so much of a difference. I think that's the real jump. And it's why I find it so much more entertaining because you literally have no idea what you're going to get. Take just another example, Wisconsin, Minnesota last night, 6 seconds left. You have 3 points to spare on the under, close 135, 134.5. Yours truly had 135.5. So I was kind of good, but Wisconsin goes to the line because they fouled. They missed both free throws. There's 7 seconds left. Minnesota dribbles up the court. Again, 3 points to spare. Wisconsin hits it out. Ball goes out of bounds. 1 second left. They need to review it. So it's basically a free timeout for Minnesota. The game is over. Wisconsin's up 4. This possession means nothing now. There's 1 second left. Of course, they tried their hardest running out of bounds play. Fire a three in 135 lands on the total. Like that doesn't happen really in the NBA, like where the last second just matters. It matters in college basketball. So I find this stuff wildly entertaining. And that game was honestly awesome. I was cracking up. It was awesome. I love college basketball.
Clearly the love is there. And it was entertaining. I don't know if I can necessarily get on board by saying it was an awesome game because normally when I talk about like that aspect,
no, not from a quality of play perspective. From
quality of play, I feel should factor into whether or not a game is awesome or not. Like down the stretch, and I think you even tweeted about it. Like some of those possessions, particularly by Xavier had great opportunities to put the game away in the end of the second half. Didn't do it.
Yes.
First overtime, second overtime, I think they were
Providence
up and then they let
Providence had the game wrapped up. Then Providence should have won in double overtime.
And Providence, by the way, like somebody was tweeting me because I tweeted out that Providence, like by far and away, the number one team in luck rating over at KenPom this year.
Ever.
Yeah. Oh, is it ever?
Ever. Like by like a wide margin.
Yeah.
It's them and like I saw someone tweet it. It was like them and like 2013 Wagner, like a mid-major in the mid 2010s.
Yeah. So the top 5 this year is Providence plus 0.208 in luck rating. That's followed by Samford at plus 0.180.
That just shows the discrepancy, like there.
That's a massive discrepancy. It's a huge jump by more than 0.002%. New Mexico State, Texas State, and then your Wisconsin Badgers, number 6 when it comes.
Well, I told you I'm not so high on
right
from a relative perspective.
But what I think is so interesting is that somebody was tweeting at me last night and they said, well, at some point, like, do you only just put it on luck? Like maybe they're just a good team at winning close games. And then I was thinking about it from this perspective too. On Tuesday, when I took Colorado State as a dark horse Final Four team, I mentioned their ability to close out and win some of those close games. I think the difference is that Providence, purely from a metric standpoint, is way further down than the other teams that are in that echelon for a top 10, top 11 team. So like when it comes to Providence, and we'll get into our NBA futures and our bold predictions and some more stuff when it comes to college basketball in just a second. But last night was just so wild that I had to get Reed's perspective on it. Like, do I need to start changing my evaluation on a team like Providence where, yeah, they've been lucky, but maybe they're doing it enough to the point where we have to start evaluating them as a team that just knows how to win really close games. And in situations like that, come tournament time, you almost have to give them the benefit of the doubt as opposed to saying, well, their luck is going to run out at some point. Like at one point, does variance feel like it's no longer a part of the argument?
Yeah, it's all subjective to me, and maybe it's biased. Maybe it's because I've found myself backing Providence in a lot of spots. Because the way I see it is the market makes a number, right? Like it's not like Providence they're 23-3 now. Yeah, 23-3. It's not like the market sees Providence as some juggernaut team. They were
true.
They opened. I was able to get Providence -1 on Tuesday night.
Let me just follow up with that really quickly. Like to me, the fact that they were only a 1-point favorite at one point moved up to -2. I looked at that because I'm a lot of times I like to think about it from why is this line what it is? Like what are the odds makers trying to do? To me, it felt like it was a trap line. It's why I like Xavier on the money line. It's why I liked him at +2 yesterday. Obviously, it didn't work out, but they were basically saying we know the public is going to take Providence, better team, top of the Big East.
Yeah.
They feel like they're getting free value there. It probably should be closer to maybe 4 or 5, but you're getting it at 1 or 2. Go ahead, please take Providence, and we'll back the sharp side with Xavier. And it didn't work out, but to me, that's what the line sort of represented last night.
No, again, the market knows that Providence is a luck box. I have watched my fair share of Providence. I lean more. Yes, they are very lucky, and yes, they will probably end up being a first-round exit because that's just how this stuff works. I lean towards I think there's a fine line between they are not a fine line, but I think that there is reason to believe they are very lucky, but they also are a good team. They're not as good as their record. They probably should be closer to 20-7, 18-9 than 23-3. But again, I think the market kind of says that they would have been underdogs against Xavier on the road last night,
right?
Considerably by 2 buckets. So I think that the betting market knows that Providence is a luck box, but that's baked into the number. We know Providence is good, not great, despite having this crazy record. Someone texted me last night, why are you on Providence? Is it a trap? I was like, I don't know. It might be, but I make Providence closer to a 2.5-point favorite. So I'm going to bet Providence. My numbers just like Providence. So I'm going to bet them.
Right.
But I also know that their luck is going to run out. So it's kind of juggling a lot of different things. But I think that, yes, they're lucky, but everyone else knows they're lucky. So if everyone knows it, then is it really that, predictive? Like, it's, again, they
It
closed it.
depends on who you ask, right? Like if you're talking about like traditional public bettors, I think they have a general idea that they've maybe been a tad bit lucky, but I think you also have to tailor some of the
Yeah.
line to the rest of the public and how they're going to bet it. Just because it was a game on CBS Sports Network, Big East game, like it wasn't.
That was a huge game last night. Xavier's like quietly playing themselves back toward the bubble, and Providence trying to wrap up a Big East title. Like that was a big game. And listen, Providence has a lot of veterans, and I'm not counting them to make a tournament run. We'll keep teasing it, but that KenPom article, Providence is not in any of the tiers I mentioned. They're not a Final Four team by any means, but listen, they're a fun team. They're a good team, and I like them, and they've made me money this season. So yeah. I'll thank you, Ed Cooley.
Yes. Big Ed has gotten it done. And I've also, I think the slight dagger with Al Durham, former Indiana Hoosier, going there.
He's been huge for them.
They're showing a nickname of him being the closer, which again, like Durham was a fun player to watch.
Indiana, ironically, desperately, like more than anything, Indiana needs a closer.
More than anything. More than anything. And, that wasn't his role at Indiana, like during the Archie years either. Like they just didn't have anybody. And also still nobody can make a shot, but this is not an Indiana show. And I certainly don't want to take it in that direction because we want people to enjoy their morning and be happy and get off to a good start to their day. So I don't want to ruin that. So while we're on the subject of college basketball, I want to go over the article that you wrote over at BetSided because I think it's really helpful for anybody that is starting to get ready and start thinking about the teams that they want to start getting their futures down on for March Madness. And so I want to sort of give you this platform to tell us a little bit about the article that you wrote over at BetSided yesterday and how you came across this crazy predictive metric over at KenPom that's indicated the tournament winner in 19 of the last 21 seasons.
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't say like I think that this is widely as KenPom becomes more circulated. People do know this. Like I'm not going to act like I am like the sole proprietor of this. Just me kind of piecing together information, but it's something I discussed last year with shout out Tom Casale. We discussed this. We're both big into college basketball. So we kind of went back and forth on this, and I did an article, and this year I kind of went even deeper as I came over to BetSided and I was given the platform. Thank you, Ben and Brian. But basically over the 19 last 21 national champions since KenPom opened or started tracking all these things, they each ranked inside the top 20 in adjusted offense and defense of efficiency. So right there off the bat. So what does that say? That says that each team is balanced, where you go through the tournament, you go through swoons on the offensive side. You get matched up with an elite defense. You get matched up with a really good offense. Like, it's so random that you basically want your team to be best equipped to handle any sort of game state, whether you are in foul trouble and you need to just absolutely lock down the defensive end. It all is random. So basically what I did, and this is as of Wednesday, so maybe the numbers are a little bit skewed now. I'll update probably again early.
I'm going to say we can update the numbers over the course of
it's a very simple, just plugging into my Excel, but as of before yesterday's game, so there might be some change, but right now the only teams inside of KenPom's top 20, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, but it's Gonzaga, Arizona, Baylor, Houston, Auburn, and UCLA. So over 19 last 21 years, those teams would actually fit the bill as a national champion. And again, this is a moving target. There's some teams that I go on to mention in my almost famous category. They are the ones that are just outside. So a few teams I'm going to mention: Kentucky, who was fourth in offense. They actually dropped a spot. They're now 22nd in defense. But again, they're right there. One good defensive game, they're going to be back inside the top 20. So they're nearly there. Another two teams I'm looking at, and a team I have a future on, Illinois. They're hanging around the top 20 going into yesterday's game, and they play tonight. They were 20th and 24th. And then UConn, who big win, another Big East game on Tuesday. They beat Villanova. They're 17th in KenPom. They're 25th on offense, 26th on defense. So again, balance. That's what we're looking for here. Yeah. So I wrote down probably a dozen teams that are in my almost famous category. These are teams that are just on the outside of fitting that top 20 threshold, but they're actually top 50 on both sides of the ball. So almost like a national champion light. These are kind of your dark horses where like they could play themselves into that upper echelon. And then there's your uneven teams. I'm trying to think of a better name for them, but that's just what they are. They're uneven. They are elite on one side, bad on the other. And
so like Purdue, for example,
yes,
is a great indicator. Purdue, one of the top offenses, one of the most efficient offenses in the country. Number one.
Better than Gonzaga. They are the number one offense. They were outside the top 100 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So they are,
which is unusual for a Matt Painter coach team, by the way, because that's
yes,
normally a team that's very solid on the defensive end of the ball.
And again, that's why so this uneven team, I think that this is probably going to be from a game by game betting the tournament. This is your more, this is the target group right here, because I think it's twofold. A team like Purdue, which is number one in offense, 114th in defense, they are going to bludgeon whoever they play in the first round, and probably the second round too. They're probably going to blow them out. They're probably going to win by 20. They're able to win with margin because their offense is so explosive with Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, the 7'4" monster down low, Travion Williams, the best passing big in the country. But when they get to the Sweet 16, when they get to the later games, they are in trouble when they face the more balanced teams. When a team like UConn can match them on the perimeter and also give some trouble down low with Sanogo, Purdue's they're in trouble. They are going to find themselves in some serious trouble. But on the other side of the coin, I'm looking at a team like North Texas, who I was on last year too, ironically, beat Purdue in the first round.
They did.
Yeah, they are 39th in KenPom. This is as of Wednesday, so let me see. I'll just read off today's. But yeah, still 39th. They dropped to 100th in offense, but they're 19th in defense. So North Texas in the first round, they're going to be probably catching a bucket or two as an 11 seed. And guess what? I'm going to be on them because they're so good on defense that with the right matchup, they're going to overwhelm their opponent and win. Think of Oral Roberts last year. Let me just pull up what they finished with in offensive efficiency.
Okay. And again, so for anybody that's just joining us on the show today, so Reed broke down the different national championship contenders. The teams that rank in the top 20 have gone on to win a national championship 19 of the last 21 years. You also brought up the fact that Baylor, who had been in the top 20 for both offense and defense last year, just fell out because of a COVID break just outside the top 21. So really, if you think about it, it's almost been 20 out of the last 21 years. The teams that rank in that category are Gonzaga, Arizona, Baylor, Houston, Auburn, and UCLA when it comes to teams that are both in the top 20. And then, you mentioned that Gonzaga, Arizona, and Auburn in particular really fit the bill. But go ahead. Do you have that stat when it comes to Oral Roberts?
Yeah, so they actually, I kind of overrated them. They didn't finish as well, but it still fits. I can make this work. But Oral Roberts last year finished the season 66th in offense efficiency and 219th on the defensive side of the ball. They beat Ohio. They were the 15 seed. They beat Ohio State, who finished the year. Ohio State, who everyone loved last year. They were this dynamic offense. They finished 4th in offense efficiency, but 82nd in defense. So again, this is a team that is overvalued based on their offense. But when a team like Oral Roberts comes in that finished top 20 in 3-point percentage, they have dynamic guard play. If they could match you on the offense side of the ball, yeah, their defense is bad, but they could overwhelm you because it's one game. That's why you don't necessarily see like randomness in the NBA playoffs, right? Because it's a 7-game series. Like there's some variance, but
sure,
more times than not, the better team pulls it out, right? Like that's why you see minus 300 series spreads going into it. Like you see such overwhelming, but in college basketball, it's one game. Anything can happen. So teams that are hyper efficient on one end and really bad on the other in one game, that could work. But in the futures market, I'm maybe not as enticed to bet on them to go make the Final Four or something. So again, that's a team like North Texas who is outside the top 100 on one side, but inside the top 20 on the defense side of the ball. So a lot of Mountain West teams with that bill, like Boise State and San Diego State on the defensive side of the ball. And again, Ohio State, just again, the Big Ten has several teams. Iowa and Ohio State are each inside the top 10 offensively, outside the top 80 in defensive efficiency. So those are two teams to keep an eye on. If they get the wrong team in the first round, they could get bounced really early.
Do you look at a team like Illinois, who's 20th and then 24th, is a team that can kind of work their way in? Or are there any other teams that you think could make a charge into this category heading into the end of the season?
Yeah. So I mentioned Illinois and UConn as two teams in that almost famous category that have my eye. I have a future in Illinois. I saw kind of a big number at a local shop, and I bet on that. But Texas Tech's a really interesting case. I'd keep an eye on them. They almost profile like that uneven team. 46 on offense, number 1 on defense, but they do a lot of their damage at home. So that's a team to keep an eye on. I would say one other team to see, Villanova and Kansas, also really good on offense. Little shaky on D. They're 30th and 32nd in adjusted defense efficiency, but top 10 on offense. Those, again, I'm not breaking the mold here. All those teams profile as contenders. But of course, I think Kentucky, when they get healthy, if they do get healthy by the tournament, which I expect they will, Ty Washington and Xavier Wheeler, they sat out last night against LSU, a game they won.
Yeah.
They're rightfully in that national championship tier. They're really, really talented on both sides of the ball. So by the time March rolls around, Kentucky will fit that 2020 category.
All right. So really good stuff. If anyone is looking for a little bit more information, Reed will definitely be updating that article over the course of the next handful of weeks over at BetSided. Highly encourage you guys to check it out, especially if you're trying to get that indicator of what teams to really start to focus in on come tournament time in your futures market, and also for your brackets as well. Let's transition to the NBA because we got the second half finally tipping off tonight. I want to go over a future that I have, as well as a bold prediction, get your perspective on it. Peter and Donovan, who are hosting the show on Monday during President's Day, they gave out their favorite second half NBA futures. Peter's was Nikola Jokic to win MVP at plus 280. Donovan is on Milwaukee at plus 600 to win the NBA Finals. Let me start with my future, because this is a guy that I think we had actually talked about a handful of weeks ago. And I still think that there is an available market for Jaren Jackson of the Memphis Grizzlies to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's first in the NBA in blocks. He's third in blocks per game. He's fourth best defended field goal percentage within 6 feet of the basket, even though he's not a center. So when he is asked to guard a center, he is limiting shot opportunities and also limiting effective field goal percentage near the basket. He's somebody that has to guard every position on the floor. He spent around 58% of his minutes guarding forwards, 22.4% of his minutes versus guards, and then 20% versus centers. So you can place him anywhere on the floor and he's going to be effective. And then I just think he's somebody that, with the rest of the competition, Draymond Green continues to miss time. Rudy Gobert obviously has a dynamic impact on the offensive side of the ball. The Jazz are 11th in defensive rating when he is not on the floor, but when he's on the floor, they're first. But my issue is that this is somebody that just missed 9 consecutive games. He's missed 14 out of his last 19. Shout out to my former colleague, Michael Pino, over at Sports Illustrated, for putting a lot of this information together. I just think Gobert is going to play his way out of it because health is going to continue to remain an issue. Like, the issues with Gobert are usually indicative of someone that's going to miss more and more time. And so I'm playing it on Jackson as somebody that is playing every game, that's still all over the floor, that's going to end up leading the league in blocks, which is not necessarily the end-all be-all metric when it comes to strong defensive play, but it's considered in the voting process. I just think it's a value play, and you're betting on Draymond and Rudy Gobert continuing to miss time, which they've already done plenty throughout the course of the season. So what do you think of Jaren Jackson at 7-1 for Defensive Player of the Year? Is there still a chance?
So I'm also on Jaren. Like, when we discussed this, I actually took a stab at it at a higher number. I pulled up the odds on my phone so I could see. I agree with you. This market is so out of whack that there is a market. I'm not sure if Jaren Jackson's going to win, but I'm certain Draymond Green is not going to win. He will. If I get a two-way market on Draymond Green, like minus 300 to not win Defensive Player of the Year, that is like, can I rent? We'll hold off rent, landlord, for a few months. I need to I'll get you all of it and then some after. It's fine. I'll pay interest.
Golden State, Reed, is still number one when he doesn't play.
Draymond might not play the rest of the regular season. That is on the table. He has not played in a month and a half. What are we doing here? Right. Gobert plus 175. Sure, he can win. That'd be 4 and 5 years. I don't know. I think the issue with Jaren Jackson, also Giannis plus 450, I'm not super sold on, just because he's also in the MVP race. I'm not
Yeah, sometimes those two cancel each other out. It's like Morant and MVP, and then for most improved player. And I have I think a 50-1 Morant MVP futures ticket, which is frustrating me because I think he deserves and warrants consideration for the type of season that he has had and Memphis has had. Yeah, they'll give him most improved player, even though I think you can make an argument for someone like DeJounte Murray, who I also have a futures ticket on. But again, conversation for another time.
So Jackson 7-1, I like. The issue is, can he get enough buzz around him? Because Memphis, if I'm not mistaken, they're outside the top 10 in defensive efficiency. If Memphis was like a defensive monster, then yeah, Jackson could he could be almost like the achieve, like he basically receives the award for the success of the team. You know, he's kind of the shining star. The issue is their defense isn't necessarily elite. So that's what gives me a slight pause. I mean, I'm on him. I'm hoping he gets there. The other two that just jump off the page, Embiid 20-1, I'm going to say no because he's in the MVP race. Mikal Bridges, yes. I think he's an awesome defender and everyone knows it. So if the Suns take home the best record, but which is still, even with CP3's injury, good enough, I think maybe he takes home the individual award for the Suns' success. We have that. Robert Williams, 30-1. Boston's become this insane defensive team under Ime Udoka, former Brooklyn Nets assistant. Maybe Robert Williams takes home the cake as like the crown jewel of the Boston defense.
Right. The sort of the narrative starts to get driven home a little bit.
Again, all these awards are so narrative driven that you almost could throw out the stats sometimes and just say, okay, who do you think it's almost like a psychology debate. Like, who are the voters going to vote for? You know, like it's or it's like recency bias, like with Jamar Chase, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but like Mac Jones was the favorite for 75% of the season, and then Chase had that game against the Chiefs, and he rightfully won Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I bet you if that game happened in Week 8, no one would remember that, and Jones would probably have the recent success to get it.
Yeah.
So I do think that some of this is recency bias. If you see Memphis climb towards the top, maybe finish with the 2 or 3 seed, you could see them get some more recognition. I'm just looking down the board now. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a few long shots. Like, I don't even know. There are some just wild names on this list, but like AD can't win, obviously. I don't think Bam Adebayo could win. This is taking too long, but we'll dive into this later this week on for some more content on this, because this is a very interesting market and probably the most. You could hit a long shot here, I think. I think that there's an opportunity for sure.
Yeah, today might be a good opportunity for a roundtable over at BetSided for some of these final future bets that I think we might be able to put together. That might be brought up in our brainstorm. All right, so I have one bold prediction before we get to our best bets that I'm also curious to get your take on. And we can spend like maybe a minute or two on this. I think the Lakers are cooked, and I think that they know it. And I saw the expression on LeBron James's face not having to play with his Laker teammates over the weekend. You were there in Cleveland, so you could see it radiate off of him, especially with that game-winning shot. He was so happy not having to play on that Lakers team. There's clearly some issues between him and management. They're 3-7 in his last 10. They're not healthy. I think they shut it down. I think they try to tank for the second half. Like, they just know they're not winning a championship this year.
But what's the point? What's like? It's not like LeBron's getting any younger. Like, what? They don't have their pick, I don't think. So there's no point in tanking the season away. They might just not win a lot. But what's the future? What? I interrupted you.
No, it wasn't necessarily a future. I just think they know they're done, and they say the hell with it. Give one opportunity to load up next year, get everybody healthy, get everybody rested, and just sort of come to the determination that this year is not the year. Try to find and improve whatever draft capital you might have left. Trade it away for one final run and say that's it. I just don't know. To me, I think it's less of an embarrassment if they basically go and admit that they're done, as opposed to hanging around, going into the play-in round, and then losing. Like, I think it's like in PR, right? Like, you're trying to set the narrative as opposed to having to react to the narrative. And I feel like that's what the Lakers are going to do.
So I'm looking at the NBA. I'm looking at the Western Conference standings. The Lakers are going to be in the play-in game. Like, Okay, so
that's what I'm saying. Like, just avoid the play-in round because you're not going to do anything afterwards. And if you lose in the play-in round, that's the story, as opposed to saying you're reloading for the future and you want to make sure that you get everybody back and healthy, and just recognize that this isn't your year. I think that changes the narrative and it becomes more positive for the Lakers moving forward.
So, like, if the Lakers get into the playoffs, AD gets healthy, he's going to be at what? Like, it's March right now. He could be back in a month. He's back at the beginning of April. They play in the playing game. They probably win because they have LeBron. Like, LeBron is still playing at, like, all world levels. It's pretty insane, honestly. And it feels like he's almost coasting. I was at Nets Lakers a few weeks ago, and he was just unbelievable. I disagree. I think he knows that he has this limited window and he wants to rack up as many championships, despite his own failure of acquiring Russell Westbrook, who I was the biggest anti. I don't think the Lakers are going to win anything, but I do think they're going to make the playoffs. And I don't think Phoenix is going to want to see the Lakers as an 8 seed. I think the Lakers might be live in that series, to be quite honest with you. I think the Lakers are cooked, but they almost beat the Suns last year. And it's why I think the regular season is becoming, these 2 years, especially with the COVID pauses and the teams being ravaged for a handful of games and stuff. And you're going to see the Lakers before Anthony Davis got hurt. I'll be brief. The Lakers before Anthony Davis got hurt last year, they were going to beat the Suns as a 7 seed, I believe. I believe they were a 7 seed.
Yeah.
They were going to win that series. So that worked out. The Nets are likely going to be in the playing game. The Nets are probably going to be favored over like 80% of the Eastern Conference, maybe outside of Milwaukee. And then Miami and Philly might be toss-ups. After that, the Nets are going to be favored in every series because they have a healthy Kevin Durant. If they have a healthy Kevin Durant, I should say. Yeah. So I think that these regular seasons are almost being so skewed. I don't think the Lakers are going to do anything, but I just can't see them tanking because they have no more room to improve. They have no more draft assets. They have an aging LeBron James. I can't see them just punting it, especially because they are in the 9 seed right now. 10 is Portland at 23.5. They're actively tanking. The Spurs are 25.5. Again, I'm going from the 1 seed. So the Blazers are 2.5 behind the Lakers for the 9. The Spurs are 4.5 behind them, as are the Pelicans, and the Kings are 6 back. So it's not like there's a team right there anyway. So I can't see the Lakers just packing it in.
That's fair.
I don't think they're going anywhere though.
Right. And again, like are they going to get into the play-in game? Most likely, just because everybody else around them is either trash or they're actively tanking. And again, I think the draft capital remains a key component of it. Like they just don't have any.
That's the real issue.
But I think sort of the thought process is if LeBron realizes that he's playing at an all-world level now by resting up and getting his body fully prepared for next year, does he come back with that mindset of if I can do it now, I can do it again with one final run? I get that argument, but I think at some point when you're done, and I think the Lakers know that they're done, despite everything that they've tried to do to get themselves back on track. Again, we'll have more predictions and more futures coming up a little bit later on today over at BetSided, but let's dive into best bets for today. You're looking college basketball. I am looking NBA. Let's start on the college side with a fun little rivalry in this particular matchup. Murray State and Belmont. Who you like?
So I'm going to lay it with the Racers. They're laying 3 right now at home against Belmont. This Murray State team, I just think they're a cut above Belmont this year. Murray State, they've lost 2 games all year. They lost on a neutral to East Tennessee State. Then they lost to Auburn on the road. So nothing wrong there. And then in conference play, which they are 16-0 in, they beat Belmont on the road by 22. Granted, they're not going to shoot 14-26 from 3 again, but I just think that they have the athleticism on the outside to get inside, crash the glass, and give Belmont a whole mess of issues. I think they're going to keep Belmont out of the paint. Belmont's more of a 2-point oriented team, best in the OVC and 2-point percentage. I just like Murray State to pull away here. I have this game close to 4.5. I think that the revenge angle, the desperation of Belmont, they're looking to stay alive for a bye in the OVC. I don't really see this is like a 3-headed conference with these two in Morehead State. Belmont hasn't covered against any in the 3 games. They didn't cover either game against Morehead State. They didn't cover against Murray State. I like Murray here. I think that they pull away. They win this game by close to like 6 or 7.
It's a weird line because they beat Belmont by 22 in Belmont back in the middle of January. So to only see it as a 3-point line, they're projected to win by 6. over at KenPom. To me, it feels like a tad bit of a trap, but I'm with you. They're the far better team, and they have really good size too inside with KJ Williams, 6'10", 245. Usually for mid-majors teams, that's something that they tend to be missing, but they have both an inside and an outside presence for Murray State that I think is really exciting for them this year. And another sort of sneaky potential dark horse Final Four team. They're not a good free throw shooting team though. That's something that I look at. They're 237th in KenPom, or not in KenPom, but just in overall free throw shooting, 69.7%. That's always a concern for me come tournament time, but they are a very, very good team. I'm going to go to the NBA tonight. I like the Thunder off the All-Star break, plus 10. Actually, I think that line just moved over to 9.5 over at WinBet. The Oklahoma City Thunder continue to cover at a terrific clip. They're 35, 19, and 4 against the spread. That's the second best cover percentage in the league. Only Memphis has done a better job. And I do think Phoenix is going to need to find their footing a little bit without Chris Paul over the next several weeks. First game coming off the break, teams tend to be a little bit sloppy. Their defense isn't as good. That's the Suns' calling card, really. And I just think Oklahoma City, they've just lost so many close games, but they've been in a lot of them. They're not a good team. But they do play hard. And I think especially getting double digits, or at least I got them at double digits, now down to 9.5. To me, based on what they've done all season long, and the Suns not having their engine in Chris Paul is going to be a difference maker here. So I think they cover. I think they get the job done, at least in covering the spread, not winning, but covering at home. All right. Long show, but a very fun show.
We got a lot in there.
Yeah, we did. I think we hit all of our bases today. So plenty more ahead over at BetSided. Make sure you guys check us out. Also, if you like the video and you're on the YouTube page, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Fun thing coming out beginning of next week. Had an opportunity to talk with one of the stars of the new HBO show Winning Time, Michael Chiklis. That interview is going to be coming out. We'll have a teaser right here on next Monday's podcast. So make sure you guys stick around for that. For my guy Reed, I am Ben. We appreciate you guys checking us out here on Bet and Breakfast. We'll be back next Monday, bright and early, getting up with us at 7 a.m. Eastern. Until then, may all of your bets hit, and we'll talk to you soon. Be good, everybody.